Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. My name is Kenny Cluett, and I lead Hello Europe and co-lead Hello World, Ashoka's global migration initiative. We're thrilled to have you join the Ashoka Changemakers Summit 2021. It's our global yearly milestone to share cross-cutting edge ideas and connect with like-minded changemakers from around the world. This year's edition, we're exploring the concept of a new togetherness, powered by new technologies, but also by the historical legacy of hundreds of community-led movements that have already recognized how togetherness can change our world, long before COVID hit. Before we start, let me remind you that we're going to spend the next 45 minutes together exploring the topic of migration and on changing the story, and I'll get to that in a second. Also, following this, members of the Ashoka community from SwapCard can share questions at the end of the session, and are also invited to facilitated connecting session that happens right after this conversation. We also invite members of our community to join the connecting session, where you have the opportunity to engage with the Ashoka community members passionate about migration, continue to reflect together and share your insights and personal experience. Also throughout the session, if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat, and my colleague Tito will collect them and share them with us at the end of the session. So we'll get them to people. But before we go to the speakers and before we go to the session, let me just share a story. It's 2017. It's the first EU Migration Policy Summit organized by Ashoka and partners in Brussels by Hello Europe, this new kind of sexy initiative we've started. We have 200 migration policy experts, researchers, politicians, you name it, all the top people in the sector, and plus 20 leading social entrepreneurs who had scaled amazing initiatives in the migration sphere across Europe and the world. This is a huge celebration for us. Just to put you in context, we had successfully launched Hello Europe. We'd scaled the model to 7 countries already, identifying and scaling citizen sector innovative solutions to problems underlying migration. And now we're in Brussels. We're the center of power of Europe, right? Connecting these leaders with policymakers because we knew policy was a key area that needed input from social innovators and a way to scale solutions for those innovators as well. I get up to speak as the executive director to kind of start this thing off. And I look out into the 200 people gathered there, and I see 3, maybe 5 visible migrants. Out of 200 people who planned to talk about solving migration, 5 people in the room had an immediate migrant background. At that precise moment, I realized more than ever before that we had a problem. Now, why is this a problem? So don't get me wrong. We had amazing, integrity-filled, problem-solving people in the room. Many of them were Ashoka fellows that we trust our lives with, basically, from this organization. And they were doing very, very important and impactful things. There's nothing wrong with non-migrants doing great work in the migration sphere. This is what changemaking is about, seeing a problem and chipping in to solve it with others. Everyone is invited and everyone has an obligation to make the world a better place for everyone, and particularly those in vulnerable positions, like many of the people who are on the move today. See, the problem goes deeper, and there's 2 aspects to it. First, you see, Ashoka's vision is a world where everyone is a change maker. That is, where every person has the skills and the confidence to see a problem and bring people together to solve it. This is the only way we can outrun problems with solutions. And the best people, or the best positioned people, I should say, to solve a problem are those in the communities most affected by them. In that room that day, we were only showing some people a change maker vision instead of an everyone a change maker vision. But secondly, here's the thing that makes it worse. In our world today, we have some pretty horrible narratives around migrants and migration. I'm not even going to mention the worst ones because we hear them every day on our media. But even the good narratives, and let me put that in quotation marks, are disempowering often. In Europe, at least, and in much of the rest of the world, the good narrative, the good story around migration portrays people on the move, so migrants and refugees, as passive subjects of compassion. To put it starkly, these poor people who need our help. And this narrative is so incomplete and it's so disempowering. The reality is that migrants are change makers, eager to contribute to their new location. Some are ready to roll, some are ready to move now. Others maybe need some time to recover or some help to kind of get started. But the vast majority of people on the move are ready to contribute and looking for a chance. And this is the definition of change making for us. At this conference, we had failed to show this narrative in reality. And we knew it was true too, because we had been working with migrants. We had seen entrepreneurial rates go, the rates go high, skyrocket, basically, when migrants started arriving in Europe. Europe became more entrepreneurial thanks to migrants. We were seeing solutions sprout from all around migrant and refugee communities. We were seeing change making in action from migrants, and we weren't able to show that at this key conference. So from that day on, Hello Europe, which has now become Hello World, took a bit of a strategic turn. We started asking ourselves how we can flip the narrative, find and promote more leaders from migrant background, listen more closely to what migrants are leading in their communities, and bring new voices together. We started seeking to show that everyone a changemaker world that's emerging from even some of the most dire situations of people on the move. And look, we still have a long way to go, and I could tell you a lot of great things we've done with Hello Europe and Hello America, but today it's not about that. Today it's not about sharing our success as Ashoka, but it's about listening to some of the key leaders that are on the ground, key leaders with migrant background and working with people with a migrant background, empowering change makers, giving them space, sharing platforms, and listening to the changemaker movement coming from people on the move, from refugees and migrants from all around the world. So today I'm coming here as a listener to eavesdrop on a conversation with some amazing social entrepreneurs who are on the ground. Some of them have immediate migrant background, and they're working hard to change the story as well and put back the everyone in everyone a change maker. So with that, I'd like to hand this over to Hello World's co-director, Maria Merola, and also the director of Hello Hola America from the Cono Sur team, who will kick us off with this powerful conversation. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you so much, Kenny, and it's wonderful to hear from your voice how we continue learning and how we continue expanding our understanding of what everyone a changemaker really means and how we can make it happen. And this is, I believe, and I'm sure this is the challenge of our times. So thank you so much for inspiring us to go. So hello, everyone. My name is Maria Merola, and I'm leading Hola America at Ashoka and co-leading Hello World with Kenny, as he was mentioning. I'm talking to you from Buenos Aires in Argentina, and for the next 40 minutes, we will explore together the role of migrants as change makers and innovative ways of shifting mindsets around this from the voices of true change makers who are joining me today in this conversation. Before we go, I may remind you that we encourage the members of our community to join the connecting session that we will have right after this session, where you will have the opportunity to connect with our speakers at the Ashoka community who are passionate about migration and continue the reflection together and share your insights and personal experience. So we'll make this a real conversation around this. So now let me introduce the outstanding speakers who will help us navigate this topic today. We have together with me, I'm super honored to have Mariana Brilhante. Mariana is co-founder and CMO of Speak, and she's joining today from Portugal. Hi, Mariana. And we also have Sergio Saravia. Sergio is the founder and CEO of Remity. Remity is a digital multi-purpose cross-border payment platform, and he'll tell us about it just a minute from now. And then we have Alejandro. Alejandro Dali is a Venezuelan migrant. He's 25 years old, if I'm not wrong. He's based in Colombia right now. He's the director of El Derecho a No Obedecer. That's a platform that explores, promotes, and creates new ways of citizen engagement and participation. And finally, hello, Alejandro, sorry. And finally, we do have Ana Isabel Ballarino. Ana Isabel is Venezuelan economist, and she's a sociologist and economist based in Peru currently. She holds an MA in political science and has an extensive career as a social entrepreneur promoting change makers in Latin America with a special focus on women. So welcome, everyone. I'm sure we'll have a wonderful conversation for the next 40 minutes. And let me start with you, Sergio. So Sergio, according to your own personal experience, what do you think are the main challenges today for migrants, and how can social innovation help us to bridge or overcome these challenges?
Well, first of all, thank you, Maria. Thanks, Kenny, and thanks, Ashoka, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this such an amazing panel and addressing this very sensitive and important matter for the whole world. So regarding your question, well, I think that starting with the key challenge that migrants are facing around the world, it's important I think that it's very important to give very clear the size of the challenge and opportunity. And when I talk about the challenge, I try to measure in terms of person, because this is the critical part of the immigration. We are personal. There are persons around the world trying to improve their own social and family condition. So if we consider that according to the United Nations, there are more than 300 million persons living in a different country, I always say, if we put all these persons in the same territory, we are talking about the fourth biggest nation in the world. And most of them, I could say 80%, excluding from different formal financial system or other formal system that local people have, right? So to me, the first one is identity. And when I mention identity, I'm not referring only to the ID card, right? Which is very important for starting dealing in a new country with companies or with the government or other person. But I only mean the history of the person, because when I had the opportunity to move from Argentina to the US, I felt that I was to restart my life from the scratch, because I wanted to get some medical services for my family. But at that time, I realized that in the US, there were no history about my background. So I had to pay more expensive medical insurance because there were no history about myself. While I was here in Argentina, I had a very good medical insured. And the same happened with the financial services. When I wanted to get a credit, I couldn't even get a credit in the US because I had no history there in the US, while when I was here in Argentina, and I was talking to the same bank, different branches, the same bank, but for the same bank in different countries, I was not a customer. So I realized that I had to rebuild my identity, rebuild my history in a new country, and I was a very fortunate person that I had some resources to address this problem, but most of the people does not have the same resources. So this is the critical thing that migration we need to solve for allowing migrants to unleash their power, their emotion, and create a better economy and a better opportunities for their own families in a new country, right?
That's wonderful, Alejandro. Thank you. I was wondering about you, Mariana. What do you think are the challenges you see from your work at Speak for migrants?
Thank you, Maria. From our experience, and actually it has been recently made a study with many entities from the sector in Portugal to ask migrants what they see as the main challenges when coming to Portugal. And there are several challenges that many face, as Sergio was mentioning, like the financial is one aspect of it. Immediately when you arrive to a new country, there's an obvious one, which is the language barrier. And then there has been like others that have been mentioned, as the understanding the culture, understanding the costumes, not having a network with them, finding a job, which is quite challenging as well. So with having a job also comes like the health system. And we could go on and go on with the challenges that newcomers face when arriving to a new country. At Speak, what we have seen is that if we put people together and if we try to break the language barrier through informal and safe environments, putting locals and newcomers together, people actually, they start to get to know each other, break prejudice, and it has a twofold impact. So it has an impact on newcomers, on the way that they will get to know the costumes and the culture, and they will make new relationships in the new city, being locals and migrants. And also it has an impact on the local community, because when the local community starts looking at migration and starts not hearing the numbers, not hearing economically it makes sense migration, because migrants are more entrepreneurial, as Kenny was mentioning. Migrants bring money to the countries where they are based in. They also give jobs to others. More than the numbers are powerful, but more powerful is for you to get to know John, who is from the UK, or for you to get to know Ali, who is from Jordan, or any other countries. And when you get to know those stories, and when you get to know the person, your mind changes. And this is what we also saw when we implemented, when we are working with Speak, which is putting locals and newcomers together. While they break the language barrier, they also break those prejudices, and they start to get to know each other and help each other. I can give you actually a personal example that just happened a few weeks back. Well, I have a baby girl, so she's 1 year old, and I'm also a participant at Speak, so I help others to learn Portuguese. And one of my participants, Lynn, she's from Jordan, and she was having her baby in Portugal. So she knew that I had a baby. She sent me a message, "Hey, Mariana, I'm having my baby in Portugal. What hospitals do you recommend?" At the time, she didn't even know if her husband or mother could come to Portugal to be with her. So I talked with my network of friends who I actually know a few doctors, and I asked, okay, what hospital would you recommend? Because it was in a different city. They gave me recommendation, and she ended up having the baby in one of the hospitals that a friend of mine works. So when she was at the hospital, I asked my friend, okay, can you please go and check on Lynn and see if she's okay, if she needs anything, because now with COVID, nobody else can get into hospitals. And this is like the further impact of what a simple solution like sharing like culture can bring to you. And like the story, there are many. And this is one example. Actually, at Speak, when we talk about how social innovation can bring change and how can also be an effect, is that probably one day Lean will be the one also to help others who are needing to go to the hospital or in need of something official in Portugal, for example.
That's wonderful. And I think simple stories make us like click and understand what we mean by this. Thank you so much, Mariana. I was wondering, Alejandro, from your personal experience being a migrant in Colombia, how has social innovation helped you overcome the challenges we know you might have faced in this transition?
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to all the team of Ashoka. I'm so pleased to be here and sharing this panel with all the other attendees. And I think I'd like to start pointing out something while I introduce myself. My name is Alejandro, and I'm one of 5 million Venezuelan migrants and refugees. And that's a statement. And that's something I would like to further ado. In the last 5 years, more than 5 million people have left Venezuela due to the social economic crisis. I'll say some of us have been welcomed and have had the opportunity and the chance to create a new life and to create a new dream for us while we had to flee our home. However, when talking about the challenges, one of the main challenges that migrants and refugees face all over the world is xenophobia. We're talking about people that are not able to dream or to build a new world just because they're criticized and discriminated for something they have no control over, such as the place they were born. So in our case, en el Derecho a No Obedecer, we have worked in different cities and countries in Latin America to promote the social and cultural integration of Venezuelan migrants and refugees. We have done that through social and cultural actions, conversation spaces, mobilizations, among many others. Though I have a lot of stories to share from those, when talking about challenges, after we started in 2018, we have mobilized around 100,000 people in Colombia just. However, we didn't know if the actions we were doing were having the impact we wanted. And that's when we asked ourselves, how can we actually measure xenophobia? And then go social innovation. So what we decided to do is to use technology. And now it's been, I think, 1.5 years, we co-founded the Xenophobia Barometer, a platform that uses machine learning and big data to analyze the narratives around migration in social networks, in Twitter, in web pages, and in the media in different countries in Latin America. We started in Colombia, then to Peru, and this Tuesday we open Ecuador. And that's the power of innovation. I mean, through this project, we actually were awarded with the first innovation award in the Migration Forum on GFND, Global Migration Forum on Development. that's the name. And I always say, I mean, we're an organization of migrants, and we're young migrants, and we're making the difference. And that's the power of shaping the narratives. When you give people the opportunity to create, to innovate, and to try to change things to a position where they are not seeing. And I love what Kenny said at the beginning, because I think we need to change the narrative of pour them to give me opportunities and give me a seat at the table, because I really can make a difference. And I think that's something so important to do right now in terms of fighting xenophobia, not just in Latin America, but all over the world.
That's super powerful, Alejandro. Thank you. And I think we will expand a little bit more on narratives and how are effective ways of changing the stories we tell ourselves and each other. I want to expand a bit more around that. So I'll ask you about that in a bit. But first, Ana Isabel, I'd love you to introduce yourself and also tell us about, from your extensive experience in working with migrants, how do you see social innovation is helping helping them overcome these challenges we are seeing around migration? I think, Ana Isabel, you're on mute.
Yes. Thank you, Maria, and thank you all the Ashoka team for the invitation to share in this panel. I think I'm going to focus a little bit on how migration impacts women in a very different way that it affects men. It's no secret that women are more prone to being mugged on the journey to their country. Peru is the second largest country receiving Venezuelan migration in Latin America. The first one is Colombia. I myself am a migrant. I migrated to Peru at 57 on a very white privileged position because I did have some savings so I could support myself in Peru while being there, while getting a job and everything and finding projects. But most women are not. And one of the main things that happens is that when there's the chance for the family to get to become regular in the country, especially I'm talking about Peru, what happens is that women are left behind because there's this belief that men are more able to find jobs, will get better paid jobs, and then women are left without any credentials, without any identification, and become irregular in the country. So one of the things that we have been doing from Freya, from the Centro Hispanoamericano para la Mujer Freya, is empowering women in entrepreneurship, because what we find is that many Venezuelan women who have some kind of degrees, at least 58% of the migrant population in Peru has at least high school education, which is a very high number. And it's a very important opportunity for these women to continue or start new new businesses in Peru. And the challenge comes from this left out problem with identification and how to pay fees for getting regular in Peru. So what we have done is that we give these women training in entrepreneurship. We do some kind of accompanying them. I'm sorry for my English, I'm so rusty these days, but we have been listening to them. That's why I loved what Kenny was mentioning, because what we did, we had a group of about 50 women in the first formation we did, and we listened to these women and we accompanied them until the end to make their businesses grow. And another thing that we have done is we have matched Venezuelan women and entrepreneurs in Venezuela with these women in Peru, and we have been sharing best practices in their different fields, and that has proven a very good innovation for us, because what women in Venezuela feel like they have been left out, and women in Peru have been feeling that they have to struggle a lot, and to put these two populations together of women starting their own businesses and struggling with their own issues due to the countries they're settled at, but being women in these countries has been very, very powerful for all of them. So building this community of entrepreneurial women, Venezuelan women, both in Peru and Venezuela, has been a major challenge, and but it has proven very useful because we have listened to these women, listened to their needs, and putting them together is, I think it's going to make a difference in how these women conduct their businesses in both countries.
That's amazing, and Isabel, thank you so much. I wanted to come back a little bit to the question, or to the point we were making about narratives, how the stories we tell ourselves and tell each other shape the way we and people around us think, and think, of course, about migrants and migration and what they can contribute and how they are seen, really, and understood. And I was wondering, Sergio, from your experience founding and creating Remedy, how this shaping the narratives thing has worked in the way of creating a new business and creating a new experience, for a new service for migrants, but also new stories and new ways of them of understanding themselves. Am I right? Has this happened?
Yeah, well, it's important to expand my own presentation in terms of who I am and who I belong to. As I told you, I was born in the Patagonia region, which is the south part of Argentina. But my parents are from Bolivia. So from the very beginning, so I have the migrant DNA running in my blood, because from the very beginning, I got to learn how difficult it is to start over in a different country. And moreover, when you still need to help the relatives who are in the origin country, right? I still remember my father traveling 80 kilometers from the town we lived to the capital city in order to send money to my grandma or my relatives who were still in Bolivia. And the story is that, coincidentally, as a professional, most of the migrants are looking that their son become professional. And well, I became professional, and coincidentally, I ended up working for the same company that my father used to use for helping my grandma and relatives there in Bolivia, and the biggest one, the global leader company. And regrettably, I got to learn that after 30 years, the service remains completely the same. So after 30 years, there was no innovation in this service. And while we are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, being able to be transported without driving a car, there are a lot of people who are still grabbing physical cash, traveling to a physical location to send money for family help, and in the receiving side happen exactly the same. There are people who are waiting for this family help, who need to waste valuable working hours because they need to travel to a physical location to grab the family help and then pay for their needs. So to me, that's a shock. And the second thing that I got to learn that was that the story of my father was not unique. To me, my father was a hero, making such a sacrifice for my grandma and my relatives. But I got to learn that the story was the same for millions of people around the world. And as I mentioned before, putting all migrants together in the same territory, they are the fourth biggest nation. And that shocked me, and I decided to quit the company and to launch Remedy, right? So before even getting $1 for starting the business, and before even getting the clear idea of what we were going to do, the founding team shared the same vision and the same purpose, which is shifting the life, or building a solution that could shift the life of millions of immigrants. And this is so powerful for us because having the purpose very clear from the very beginning, what made us much more easier to build what it is now Remedy. As you mentioned, Maria, Remedy, it's a multi-purpose cross-border payment platform that we built focusing on the bank, but mainly on the unbanked people, right? Because the reality is that most of the receivers, the beneficiaries from the money remittance, which is very important component for countries and for the population who are migrants, most of them are in emerging markets, and emerging markets are still very cash-based economies. So we needed to build a solution that consider their current condition, and on top of that, build some solution that could enhance their experiences and preventing them or saving them the effort and the sacrifice of moving to a physical location. So fortunately, we were able to build an app that can be, we built a proprietary API interconnected payment infrastructure, and on top of the infrastructure, we built an app. This app could be used for bank, but mainly unbanked people who in less than 1 minute can charge or add a balance, and then while traveling in the bus or in the train, going to their job without wasting valuable hours, they can send family help, not only money, but also they can recharge the mobile phone of his or her mom in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia. They can also pay for utility bills, and we are adding other means of family help, because it's not only, or the destination of the money is paying for good or things, right? And we are so committed with the transformation of this legacy industry that this proprietary infrastructure, we open this proprietary infrastructure so that other companies can also connect our infrastructure, leverage our capabilities, and they can provide an enhanced services to their own customer. Because we are completely convinced that if we wanted to transform really the money remittance industry, it's not a game for one player, right? We need to teamwork. So all companies that share the same vision and share the same purpose are invited to join our infrastructure. We can also share our infrastructure with them, and by working together, the more companies are willing to transform the traditional money remittance services, the more we want to success, and in the end, more life going to be transformed by having access to the new digital cross-border payment services, right? So this is something that has to do with the narrative, because if my parents hadn't moved from Bolivia to Argentina, perhaps I wouldn't have been able to study, and perhaps I wouldn't have been able to learn from the industry by working in this company, and perhaps Remedy had never existed. So I'm completely convinced that migration enrich people, and by enriching people, the more powerful outcome gonna be available for the whole population, right? Not only migrants, because it's not about migrants and local person. I think that migrants is a topic, but there are a lot of stories that we could show about the combination of migrants and local people working together, making something more powerful and more impactful, because in the end, there are poor migrants are poor local people, so we need to give more opportunities to people who deserve more opportunities and who are willing to improve their own condition. And I'm completely convinced that migration enrich population, make people more powerful, because they combine different ideas, different points of view, and in the end, the result is much more better for the whole world, right?
And that's wonderful, Sergio, because that's exactly what Speak does, and merging and working on these welcoming communities and really having this shift and this merging happen in real ways. And I was wondering, Mariana, what, from your extensive experience in facilitating these spaces in which cross-learning is happening. What do you think are effective ways of shifting narratives that are going around migration? What really works?
Thank you, Maria. From our experience, we believe that there are a few things that are fundamental. We talked about already the benefits of migration and about the facts, but it's funny that it's I don't know if you're aware of a study that if you talk the little envelopes that people give in the airplanes that you can donate to a charity. Like if you talk about there are 3 million of people with hunger, or if you talk about the story of Maria who has a family and who needs food, the amount of people who donate to the story of Maria, it's a lot more than the story of 3 million, because 3 million or a number, it's so far away from our perception that we do not connect with that. So the stories and the connections that we make with others is what we will change our mind. It's interesting because out of the 4 of us, 3 are migrants. I have been a migrant myself. So we all have the personal connection, and this means something. It means that we are in contact with the challenges. My family is also has been migrants. It doesn't mean that still there's not work to be done in that way, but the story is very close to us, and I think this is what we have seen. We need to make the story close to everyone. We need to, with this connection that we promote, Speak promotes the inclusive cities. That's what we want to do. It's to contribute to inclusive cities through a very simple solution of language and culture exchange, putting people together and facilitate that. And there are a few things that are interesting that we have seen that work. It's basically it's a community-based project, as Sergio was mentioning. It's people together, so it's locals and newcomers together that give the solution. There's nobody telling them what to do. When people are put together and they get to know each other, they want to be there for each other, and that's one of the things that helps. And then they are the change makers, as we were mentioning. They change each other's lives. They start solving each other's problems. They believe that the story next to them is important, and it doesn't matter. It's John or Lucia. It's not from X country or Y country. That stops mattering. So I think this is one of the things that we have seen it creates impact. Another thing is the fact that people then want to replicate the model. Speak grows on a social franchising model, and this is basically whoever wants can start Speak in another city. And we are currently in 24 cities. We see that more than 50% of the Speak cities that are created by migrants because they have experienced Speak, or because they have heard about Speak and they believe that they generate impact in their new city. And this is amazing because people do feel empowered, and they feel that they can be the ones creating change and building a city that is more inclusive. So this is one of the most incredible things that we have seen. We thought that it would be like the city and you want to create change, but we even have people who just moved to a new city and they say, okay, I want to bring Speak here, even though I don't even have a community or a network where I am.
That's amazing. It's the change making in action at its highest form. I love it. We're nearing the end, but I want to hear back from you, Alejandro. You introduced this in your first intervention. You said this really clearly. changing the stories and the narratives is essential for changing how people think about migrants. And I was wondering what has worked for you in your personal experience? What has made it work? Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Of course, and thank you. I've been enjoying so much the intervention of my fellow panelists. I mean, amazing. I used to say in Spanish, sí a todo. So yes to everything you have just said. Regarding what has worked for us, I'll say three things. First, and I think you have already mentioned it, when we're talking about solutions to shape the narratives, we need to make them happen together between migrants and refugees and host communities. We're not just like targeting one audience. It needs to be together, because it's a different experience, the one that face migrants and refugees, and the ones that host communities needs to face or to change in terms of their behaviors to make a suitable environment for everyone. So that's one thing. Second, I strongly believe in the power of art and culture to shape the narratives. So in that sense, to give you a couple of examples, we have done several artistic interventions in Colombia. I'll give you two examples. Once we partnered together with JR, the photographer, with Inside Out Project, and create a massive installation in different cities of Colombia, but in particular in the International Simón Bolívar Bridge that joins Colombia and Venezuela. And we pasted around 200 pictures of Venezuelan migrants and refugees through all the bridge. That became a national first page in almost every journal. And when we were taking the pictures, people, when they saw it, they were like, but are these Venezuelan migrants or Colombians? And we asked them, what do you think? It could be anyone. And that's the point. I mean, that's a way to say someone, there are no difference. I mean, these boundaries are social, but you need to do it through symbols. And we always believe that symbols are more powerful than stories. And just to give you another example, once we partnered with foundations of migrants and refugees in Bogota, and we gathered around 500 shoes of Venezuelan walkers, meaning the Venezuelans that walk from Colombia to Venezuela by foot. They were used shoes, and we put them on the main square of Bogota, asking the government to put themselves of the shoes of Venezuelan migrants and refugees. And that was so powerful. I mean, you can say that. You can say, put yourself on the shoes of someone that has to leave their house, and you can put a shoe in front of their office as well. And that also works. So symbols and culture. And lastly, technology. And I believe when we're talking about narratives, most of the narratives are in the social media. Just a quick comment. I mean, the majority of us doesn't know how to recognize hate speech in social media. That's not obvious. I mean, we sometimes receive hate speech and we're like, is this hate? Am I allowed to report this to Twitter? And the answer is yes. So you need to work through technology to better understand what is hate speech. How can we use technologies to foster good narratives and not bad narratives? And that's what we have seen in the United States, in Europe, actually, where that some groups use technology to foster hate speech toward migrants and refugees that are actually not true. So we need to understand that in order to change it. And I think those three, and I just leave it there for now.
That's wonderful, Alejandro, and thank you all. I think this conversation is super. I'm so sorry to have to cut it at the highest point. I think we could go on, and Isabel, I want to hear about you also, and what do you recommend in order to help us go forward. But we are nearing the end, so I invite everyone who has also made questions in the group. We will continue this conversation in the connection session that starts right away, where we will be able to go back and forward and have another 45 minutes of conversation between our speakers and the community gathered here that also has amazing stories to shape the narratives we need to shape. So I invite everyone to join us for the connecting session right now. But before doing that, I want to thank you all very, very much. I feel like in these 40 minutes, I've learned more than in weeks and months of working and trying to understand migration from a more intellectual way or more like project-based way. So thank you all very much. I think we are starting to tell the stories we need to hear to change the way everyone thinks about these amazing change makers that are crossing borders around the world. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our audience who's been joining us, to our community, and let's see each other on the connecting session right away. And see you next week for the next panel on the Ashoka Changemaker Summit.